Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I am your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome a very, very successful entrepreneur, a digital marketing guru from Bangalore, India, Mr. Anirudh Narayan. Anirudh, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Ashutosh. It was really sweet of you to reach out and make this happen.
Thank you. Anirudh is the founder of Masterlife and Growth Spartan. He was earlier with Rocket Internet, Shutterstock, and Lean Startup Machine. He's mentored and accelerators like Numa, Silicon Road, and Rolls-Royce. And he's an author of a book titled Scale Smart, How to Get Your First 1,000 Customers in India. What an amazing journey you've had, Anirudh. So shall we start talking about Masterlife, which is your holistic personal growth platform? Tell me a little bit about this and your motivation to start.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think I was going through this phase, I think in early 2018 and 19. I wouldn't call it a midlife crisis in my early 30s, but I was trying to figure out, I've always been an advocate of personal growth, and I feel like you can pick up any skill. And I thought happiness could also be a skill. And I was trying to figure, is there a way that we can teach the skill to people? And if you kind of try to drill it down, it's a lot around balance. It's a lot around having balance across 7 or 8 areas of your life. And somehow personal growth is very top 1% focus. It feels like people are kind of satisfying their transactional needs or their roti kapda makan first to finally think about their actualization. Right? So it started with there, and I was like, what if you could quantify everybody's life skills, and then I can benchmark that and make that as a motivation. Like, for example, I was like, Ashutosh, what if your EQ is at a 0.85, which puts you in the 95th percentile, but the top 1% of leaders, their EQ, let's say, is at a 0.89, right? So it started with that. And I thought, okay, I could create a lot of this content, but instead, would it make sense to kind of get some of the best experts in the field to create content specifically for it? So journey started with running experiments with live classes, and slowly it kind of became, okay, maybe it makes sense to kind of create a platform. So the focus of Masterlife even today is skills for the mind. So if you're talking about a course or a learning path for someone around finance, it wouldn't be learn about financial stock investing, it would be how to have a financial abundance mindset. And I think over the last 2 years, we've had some relative success. I wouldn't say we're crushing it yet, but that's been the motivation. And it's still very active today, along with our performance arm, which is Growth Spartan.
Wonderful. So, when I was reading about you, I was wondering, what is the meaning of holistic? I'd love to get your perspective on how you define it.
So I think, unfortunately, when you're growing up, success in a lot of ways is tied to maybe one or two things, right? And I feel a lot of it's around maybe the kind of money you make and the job you get, or getting married, right? And I think, however, as you start hitting some threshold of money, which is it's not a survival stress, right? Once you cross that, you realize there are a lot of these other things that really add value in your life or happiness in your life, which are quite outside of work as well. So like within work itself, let's say it's not just the money you make, but like who are you working with and the kind of mission that you're after, right? Or similarly, like to be creatively fulfilled, like how you're doing this podcast, right? I think there's a huge creative and you talking to new people maybe on a weekly basis. So I think there's one aspect of that I realized around work, there can be multiple dimensions that can add a lot of value. And similarly, like I got married 2-3 years back, and nobody teaches you how to develop skills to create a sustainable, happy relationship, right? Nobody teaches you skills around conflict resolution. So I think the holistic growth for me, at least, is you having balance in your mental health, your physical health, your relationships with obviously your close ones. If your partner and your family and friends, And making sure every area you touch, you kind of are fulfilled. It just shouldn't have to be like, oh, there's some trade-off, so there's like 90% focus on one area, then it's affecting the other areas.
Amazing, amazing. You also focus on habits for personal growth. Help me understand this with maybe an example.
So I think I used to always feel like motivation was really important. I think over a period of time that has changed. Today, I feel like it's a lot around stacking habits, and habit stacking has kind of been that term I picked up because of Atomic Habits by James Clear, right? So, and he's got this really nice phrase, which is, you improve 1% every day, you can be 37 times better by the end of the year. Mm-hmm. So I think at least the way I was thinking about habit forming, they say today it's, if you do the same thing 21 days in a row or 67 days in a row, you kind of pick up habits. So I think with the course, for example, is let's say if you had to pick up how to improve your mental health, right? So we have a course on how to improve your mental health in 30 days, right? Obviously, there is a psychological angle where you meet a psychologist or you go for therapy, but there are things that you can do on an everyday basis, like let's say gratitude. So if there's spending 4 or 5 minutes and creating habit over a period of time of being grateful, I think that can have compounding effects over a period of time. So we've kind of have that embedded in the course. I personally believe that with anything, with fitness or with mental health or with any habit, any change that you're trying to bring about, I think it's about progressively trying to improve and being patient over a period of time.
Quite amazing. So I think let's now move on and talk a little bit about Growth Spartan, which is a performance marketing agency focusing on digital growth. First, before I ask you any questions, how are Masterlife and Growth Spartan synergized with one another?
They're both okay. So it's a good point. I think the way I look at life is I have 100 ideas that I want to execute. I mean, it's amazing to hear your story and the things that you've done, and I would love to carve out time for a lot of these things. And they're synergized just by having passion or having strengths in these areas. Nothing else really. But I mean, otherwise, they are two different entities to the world, but they're one company under that. But I have a marketing background, so we do the performance marketing piece, and I'm kind of passionate about personal growth. So we have the edtech play to it.
Okay. And what kind of work do you do at Growth Spartan?
Sure. So we have obviously there's been a massive growth in everyone wants to go digital today. Everyone wants to obviously sell online. I mean, I was talking to a luxury brand recently that sells furniture, and they're like, man, we need to go digital. So the limit on how much a user is willing to spend today online has tremendously gone up. I mean, earlier we would hesitate to spend 1,000 rupees online. Today it's like, I'll buy an Apple Watch or an iPhone or an iPad, right? So it's no brainer. So what we end up doing is we're trying to be highly, obviously, data driven, and we do 3 or 4 things to help people scale their digital business. So one is your standard top of the funnel, run ads, your Google ads, your Facebook ads, your Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter ads, things like that. Second is people want to rank on Google organically. So a lot of things that you can do. So that space is called SEO, search engine optimization. That's we go quite deep into that. Third one is people want to scale on marketplaces, right? So it's like I have this beautiful D2C product. I sell, let's say, I don't know, it could be resistance bands to food. And I sell on my Shopify store as well as I sell on Amazon and Flipkart and HealthCart. So like scaling on these marketplaces. And finally, the fourth piece is the conversion optimization, which is now, let's say if some customer comes to your website, how do you make sure they go further down the funnel, which is I activate them, which is maybe they give you their email ID. How do I make sure they become a repetitive customer, right? How do I make sure they refer new users? So a lot of those pieces can be automated today, and you can have triggers associated with them. So we try to help clients with these pieces. We try to be data driven. We're a team of 15 on that end.
Interesting.
Yeah, and
interesting. So, when you look at digital marketing, and when I look back at 4 decades of experience, and when I started marketing in a company like ITC, it was a completely different environment. And yet, consumer was the most important, and that continues even today. I've spoken to many people who are digital marketing gurus. So my question to you is, what are some of the digital marketing challenges a lot of the companies are facing?
Right. So first of all, I don't call myself a guru. I think that's a low rate. I'm definitely learning along the way as well.
Sure.
But in terms of some of the challenges, I think what's happening today is most companies today are dependent on Google ads, Facebook ads, at least the smaller ones today, right? They're focused on channels where you have to pay to get customers rather than organic growth. And because of a lot of the influx of funding that's come in, there is that pressure saying you have to grow, 3x, 5x, 10x in a year.
Correct.
So the growth is coming at a cost which is not necessarily profitable. And 40% of the money is actually going towards Amazon, Google, or Facebook today of your advertising spend. So challenge is how do I get a customer at an acquisition cost that makes sense? And it's highly competitive. People are impatient. So you're nobody's really happy with the pace of growth. It's like, even if they grew 25% from the previous year to this year, which in the stock market would be huge, in this space somehow it's not somehow acceptable. So I think there's a competitiveness that's kicked in. Also, I don't know, customers getting really pampered. Their loyalties are switching very quickly. I mean, I don't know if you heard, there's a company called Zepto that's raised 100 mil, right? So it's delivered in 10 minutes. Like I know people that work at Swiggy that are also using Zepto, right? So what my loyalties, I mean, as a customer, the customer is winning right through. But I think companies are burning a lot of money along the way. So I think that's the challenge, getting their attention and keeping their loyalties. I think that's definitely an issue.
So, your example of Zepto and Swiggy is fantastic, because that gives me my segue into my next question. I'm just going to ask you that brand managers are now inundated with amazing opportunities of being able to sell their products on a platform that is moving at the speed of nanoseconds. And yet the customer expectation is 10 minutes delivery. How are brand managers adapting to this incredible new environment where D2C seems to be the new norm, where customer fulfillment has become even more important than it has traditionally been? What is your perspective?
Especially in a country like India, my God, like to give you some context in terms of, so in Myntra, right, like how do the returns work? People actually come to the door, take your returns and go back. In the US, it's still, there is a central, not a warehouse, but like there's a spot where you have to go place it, right? Imagine we being so customer centric, which is great for the customer, like the amount you lose per order, I think it's quite high. I mean, I worry more for the founders rather than the brand managers, because I feel like there's this weird bubble right now that we're in. And this is, again, I'm in the VC startup world. So that's the bubble I'm talking about. Obviously, there's a private equity world, and then there's the stock market world, right? So at least in this bubble, I feel like there is just this massive skew towards trying to acquire a customer at any cost and hope that they would stick around for like 2 years or 3 years. So, but I think the interesting thing to your point though is what can brand managers today? I think there are more number of channels to actually get a customer's attention that have not been tried and tested yet, right? So I think that gives an opportunity for every company to say, hey, I'm going to use this channel to scale. Like the first instinct for someone who doesn't know enough marketing is, hey, let's try Google or Facebook, right? But I think LinkedIn, for example, today is underutilized in a massive way. Something as simple as you reached out on LinkedIn and then we had that conversation. I think they can be huge amounts of B2B lead gen that you can do on LinkedIn. Reach is 10x, literally 10x of an Instagram or a Facebook. So I think if people started building their own brand, if companies start building their own brand, focus on that, then you can start supplying multiple products over a period of time. I spoke to one of the founders. She was saying something really interesting. She's in the keto protein space. They raise a Series A and things like that. But she was saying she wished that she had created her brand on YouTube for a good 6 to 9 months, even before launching her first product. Because then she would have gotten enough insights to launch what kind of product.
Correct.
And once you build the brand, that sustainability kicks in where I can launch product number 2, product number 4. So, and I'm seeing some players do that in the finance space today as well. There's a guy named Ajinkya on LinkedIn. He did a solid job on posting amazing financial content on a day-to-day basis during the pandemic. Hit your 30,000 follower range, came with an interesting financial product, raises 2 million. And I think there are those parts that people should start thinking about, because I think the true differentiator is going to be your individuality tomorrow, right? No one's going to replace an Ashutosh. So I think the focus, if it can be on the individual along with the brand that you're creating with the individual, I think that might be really key in the future.
You're almost running 2 steps ahead of me on all my questions.
Oh, yeah.
I was going to say that the brand called you focused entirely on LinkedIn and YouTube, which is how the follower base is huge. But my question to you is that someone who knows the digital marketing universe well, how does an individual or an organization, a startup, select which one to go to? I mean, YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and now there are these reels, etc., etc. Where does one go? Because the amount of budget is finite.
It's a good question. I mean, I can give you some frameworks, but I think if you dominate a channel enough, I don't think it would matter which channel you go to. But if you're obviously B2C focused and you're in the fashion space or there's food and there's products which require display and imagery, I think obviously Instagram makes sense. If you're in the B2B space, definitely Google and LinkedIn seem to be your 2 channels that you should try. YouTube, I think, is a no-brainer if you're creating video content.
Correct.
But today it's become about repurposing. So you have your anchor channel that you will try to dominate, but then I will repurpose that content and place it on different platforms. So let's say you have the brand called you post this content on LinkedIn, but hey, I'll also post this on, let's add on Instagram, I'll post this, I'll convert a reel, put it on TikTok, right? Today, 20% of it may be content creation, 80% is distribution.
Well said. So one more question for you on digital marketing before I come to your book. Now there's this new category available, which is the metaverse. And you were giving the example of the furniture, luxury furniture. And I was going to almost say that, for a furniture supplier, metaverse is probably the best place where you can actually display everything in 3D. But I'd love to get your perspective, Anirudh, on how will the metaverse make a change for marketers?
That's a good question. So there's actually a really nice podcast of Mark Zuckerberg talking to Lex Friedman on Spotify. And he's talking about the metaverse. And he's trying to bring, obviously, a lot of the social interactions in the virtual world and try to make it as real as possible. I think for marketers, so that's the ecosystem that's being built. And then you're going to have developers in each kind of, let's say, company trying to build things for the metaverse, right? So I saw something on H&M where H&M kind of came up with its own store in the metaverse. So you could kind of walk around, pick out different clothes, check it out. I think the reason why all these things are being built is nothing will ever come close to a face-to-face interaction. Nothing will ever come close to you meeting someone in person and doing a sale or going to the retail store and trying the product.
Correct.
So all these things are essentially trying to get closest to that realist point of interaction. And I think it'll come between, metaverse will maybe sit between the real and the what we are interacting in today.
Right.
So it would be a definitive advantage. I think anybody that's able to understand the ecosystem early on, it's a lot like Clubhouse. Like Clubhouse had this huge spike during the pandemic, and people who get in first and try to build their brand will develop some form of following and traction. So I think whoever goes in the ecosystem understands it well enough and is able to build on it or is able to attract customers, that will be a new shiny object for a while. But then it will normalize. Like everything will normalize soon enough, right? So
absolutely, well said. The pendulum ultimately comes and settles in the center.
Right.
But moving on now to your book, Scale Smart: How to Get Your First 1,000 Customers in India. First, tell me, is this book available on Amazon and other platforms?
Yeah.
Just look. So everyone who's going to listen to us, our conversation, go and look for Anirudh Narayan and have a look at his book. Tell me a little bit about your book, Anirudh, as well as the hypothesis that you had when you started writing this.
Sure. I mean, first of all, you've written 8 or 9 books. I feel like you have a lot more insight on this than I do. So I'd love to hear your thoughts as well. I think in terms of the hypothesis of the book was, I remember reading I came back to India in 2016, and I felt like there were a lot of books which were high level inspirational, not like the tactical tell me what to do. So I said, let's create a book on tell me what to do if I have an idea. And the book actually pivoted as well. It initially started off with, I thought I'll take every company and kind of do a breakdown of their marketing and while talking to these entrepreneurs or the founders of the CMOs. But over a period of time, it made sense to kind of just have it a little more functional based, which is, I have an idea, what do I do next? Here are 20, 25 channels that you can use to scale your business. How did this company use this channel to scale their business? So actually, it was inspired from the book Traction, which is in the US, but the goal was to make it more Indianized and give solid examples from India. So I interviewed a bunch of these founders like Kunal Shah and Byju's, and I was lucky enough to get them before they were ungettable. Today, if I restart to Byju Ravindran, I mean, there's a good possibility he won't even see my email. Right? So reached out to a lot of them and then created the book in a year and a half or so.
Wonderful. And on that note, and your lesson, if you improve 1% every day, you get 37 times better in 1 year, which is a nice takeaway. I had never done the math. Thank you so much for speaking to me. Thank you for speaking to me at such length about your platform, Masterlife, and all the amazing things you're doing to help people for their own personal growth. And thank you for speaking to me about Growth Spartan, which is such an amazing story of digital marketing. And I have several takeaways from our conversation for myself. And finally, thank you for telling me about your book. Thank you again and good luck.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. This is really sweet of you to reach out and do this on a Saturday.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website, www.tbcy.in, to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.